And we're live.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Cisneros, and I'd like to call to order today's meeting of the Finance Committee of the State Bar of California. Today is May 5th, 2021, and I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. In order to begin our meeting, Veronica, if you could take the roll, please.
Meadows,
Here.
Dela Cruz,
Here.
Dellen,
Here.
Ganong,
Here.
Sol, Tony.
Present.
Okay.
Okay, looks like we have a quorum. We have a relatively short agenda today, and why don't we begin with our calls for public comment. I don't have our script for public comment, Veronica, but I believe that you have access to seeing who might have their hand raised and who also might be on via telephone. And if so, can you let us know if anybody appears to be requesting public comment?
There's a couple people in the attendees side, but nobody has their hand raised at the moment.
If anybody is attending this meeting and is interested in having public comment, if you're on the Zoom call, if you could please use your hand raise gesture to let us know. We would be entertaining public comment at this time.
None so far.
Okay. All right. Then, having seen no public comment, we will continue. The next item on the agenda is Chair's Report. I have nothing to report today. So with that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. I believe we have one item on the consent calendar. Typically, we don't have a presentation with consent calendar items unless there's any questions or comments that committee members want to make. We could move to a motion. Does anybody have anything they'd like to raise? Mark.
Yes, thank you. What I would like to see, and I think it would be useful for the Finance Committee and the board to know, is of the fee waiver requests that have come to the Finance Committee. We have some that are recommended to be approved by the committee, the subcommittee that looked at these, and some that are recommended to be denied. And I think there's value to tracking the racial composition of both the approved and denied. And we don't have to track each individual, but more of, of the people that applied, this is the breakdown and of the 18, and then here's the breakdown of the approved and denied. It's, I think it will be a supplement. I think looking at the impact of race and just following race patterns is useful wherever we can. We do that a lot as a state bar in other areas. So I did note that was not part of this report, and I would request that the staff, maybe at the next Finance Committee meeting, just provide a report about the racial composition.
Thank you, Mark. I hear a suggestion and a request from Trustee Tony. I don't know if any staff have any response, or if we could just make that request, enter that request, and see if we can respond to it by our next meeting.
This is Dina DiLoretto. I'm responsible for the item. It's something we can look into as far as aggregate data in the back end. As you know, we don't have that kind of data directly linked to individual records, but I can investigate whether, if we provide our Office of Research and Institutional Accountability the records of those that were granted a waiver, if they can come back with like general percentages without specific identifiers. I don't know if it's possible, but certainly something I can try to accomplish, and perhaps if it's doable, we can include that as a regular annual report after all the waivers are done in a certain billing year. So it's something I'm happy to look into.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no other matters, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Delenn, second by De La Cruz. Veronica, if you could take the roll. I'm sorry, the vote.
Yes. Cisneros,
Yes.
De La Cruz,
Yes.
Dellen,
Yes.
Ganong,
Yes.
So, Tony.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to our next business item, the annual review of the debt collection efforts and approval of proposed debt collection policy. I believe we have a presentation on this item.
Yes, Chair Cisneros, this is Wallace Tang, the Chief Financial Officer of the State Bar. And we're going to have a presentations to be done by myself and Kevin Harper, finance consultants, and also from Office of General Counsel, Suzanne Grandt and Kaur as well. And Chair Cisneros and dear Finance Committee, this item is being presented. This item was presented back in March in the last Finance Committee meeting, and the committee decided to postpone its vote to further review of the updated collection policy for delinquent debt. And this is now being presented again to you for approval of that policy. And just a little bit background that attorneys subject to the State Bars of California disciplines are required to pay for the cost of that discipline, and are also required to reimburse the Client Security Fund, CSF, for payments made to victims who were harmed by their conduct. So in this report, it provides a detailed evaluation of the fiscal year 2020 collection efforts and results, and also recommend modifications to the State Bar's collection practice. And I have a PowerPoint and I can share screen right here. Can you see it okay on the screen?
Yes.
And regarding the collection efforts, during the fiscal year 2020, the State Bar's efforts to collect outstanding debt for disbar and resigned attorneys, which is the box on the right-hand side on your screen, and including participating in the Franchise Tax Board, FTB, Court Order Debt Collection, COD program, and also the FTB Interagency Intercept Collection Program, and also obtaining Superior Court judgments resulting in liens against the real property for the discipline costs and court order CSF reimbursement. So in terms of the collection efforts has been exercised that we address the disbar and resign group. And starting in 2021, and for this report, we are asking to expand the collection effort to cover the inactive and suspended group that is represented in the middle box. That is total about 9 million outstanding debt. And right here, this is a summary for the fiscal year 2020, the outstanding debt at the year end for the disbar and the resigned attorneys, which is the first group in the right side of the box, and to show you the different type of debt that we have been addressing. And I have Kevin Harper to go for this slide. Kevin?
Yes. So it's important to know that the State Bar has historically had limited legal authority to pursue collection of amounts owed on these discipline costs. And so only in, I think, 2014 did we start having authority to send debt to the Franchise Tax Board for collection in one of their minor programs called the Interagency Intercept Program. And not until 2019 did we have legal authority to send the debt to their major collection program called the Court Ordered Debt Program. And therefore, after getting that approval, we have been transferring amounts to collection in the Franchise Tax Board over the last year or so, and made the last big push in March of 2021, getting the final amounts over there. So all of this is unfolding currently, but because we didn't have historical authority to collect, or at least not a lot of authority to collect, the amounts grew from due from the disciplined attorneys up to a staggering $234 million. Of that $234 million, as you saw in the prior slide from Wallace, 225 million of it is for disbarred and resigned attorneys. So this slide is showing that 225 million in more detail. So you see the second column adds up to that total amount owed from these disbarred and resigned attorneys. So the categories of debt are discipline costs, meaning the cost that they have to reimburse the State Bar for the cost of looking into the alleged activity, and then reimbursing us for those costs if they're found guilty. And then the court ordered debt is when they are found guilty of a particular misconduct, then there are costs that they're required to pay to harmed parties. And then the non-court ordered debt is for similar cases. So they may have harmed several parties and only one party went to court. The rest of them we are allowed to collect from that if they're the same kind of situation as the one that they were found guilty of. And then judgments are when OGC files liens against real property on behalf of the State Bar. So those are the four kinds of debt that we have. If you look at the last columns, you can look at the age of the debt. As you can see, only 10 million of the 225 million is 1 or 2 years old, and almost half of it is older than 10 years old. So it's very old debt. The collection, the likelihood of collection is not high, but the fact that we are giving this over to the Franchise Tax Board currently, we should get a big one-time influx of amounts, and then probably over the course of the next couple of years, a flattening of that curve down to some plateaued, smaller amount of collections. So that's it. I'll turn it back to you, Wallace.
Thanks, Kevin. And here's the recap of the amounts collected in 2020 by a different collection mechanism. And you can tell that we have the FTB, the COD, the Court Order Debt Program, the IIC program, the judgment money, and the self-pay. So amount collected about 1.5 million, and there are costs attached to the collection effort, and as estimated collection costs for these scenarios in 2020 was about 416,000. So this is cost effective to act on it and to collect. And then with the collection result and the efforts that we exercise, and we came up with considerations of strategy. And in entering into 2021, and as Kevin mentioned, that we keep pushing and having FTB to help us out in the COD program, IC program, and along with the money adjustment. So we continue to use all these different collection mechanism for collecting the outstanding debt. And also, as we mentioned previously, that starting this year, that we also pursue collections on the suspended and inactive attorneys. And since it is still at the early stage of the collection process and efforts, we don't have much data so far as the basis to come up with a more solid long-term strategic plan. And it will take a year or two to determine how effective that the FTB collections would be. And during these years, we'll keep collecting data on the effectiveness of each of the collection mechanism, and in particular, consideration of whether it's cost effective, and also the overall collection rate and amount, collection rate based on the age of the debt, and also assessing on the number of installment agreements, or if there are any payment plans that we come up with. So we need all these informations and more data to build up and develop a more longer term debt collection strategy based on various factors. As I mentioned, that considerations of the collection methods, what types of debts that we are talking about, and for each collection mechanism, the four mechanisms that we've been using, how's the cost effectiveness that is going on? What would be the collection projections or our expectation? And based on the data on the FTB's COD program. And at a certain point that we may want to come up with and develop write-off policy as well. That means it is not cost effective and it is dead end, then we may consider to determine the amount or the accounts of the debt, and identify them as uncollectible and then write it off. So that will be part of the strategic goals down the road. And with that, I would like to pass on to Suzanne Grandt and Kaur to talk about the update and the changes in the collection policies.
Thank you. Gagan, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, Suzanne. Thank you, Wallace. So as the board members are aware that our collection policy was implemented in 2007, and it hasn't been updated since 2010. So the policy that's in place is out of date in terms of the practices that SIDBAR is undertaking for debt collection, the types of mechanisms that are available to us, as well as the statutory amendments that have taken place in the last decade or so. So the staff is proposing an updated policy that takes all of that into account. And the updated policy is attached to this item as attachment D. And it focuses on basically the key four areas are, it describes a type of debt that's owed to the state bar that Wallace and Kevin talked about. It talks about the collection mechanisms that are available to us that you also saw on the slides with respect to the FTB programs and money judgment. And then it sets forth the type is a certain criteria for determining debt that needs to be placed on hold. So certain circumstances arise that require us to pause our collection effort, such as the debtor receiving a payment plan. So at that point, we would have to halt our collection for that time. So it goes into detail on that. And finally, it describes the type of debt that would be considered uncollectible at this time. So that's if there's a bankruptcy discharge, or if there was an error that was written. So it describes the circumstances that would make certain debt uncollectible. Essentially, that's the policy. You can take a look at the item, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have related to the updated policy. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, I think Mark you have a question?
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the staff presentation, the PowerPoint that you presented, and I like very much the information on the developing strategy moving into the future. I think it provides a very useful outline, at least for myself as a finance committee member. And I want to thank the staff for being thoughtful about that. Here's, and this is still, I don't understand the mechanics of these meetings and stuff. Here's what I want to request. I'd like to request, if possible, that staff PowerPoint that was just shown to us, it wasn't originally in the agenda items when you look on the website, the bar website. And I was wondering, is it possible just to place it in there or something like that, so that it's, I'd like it to be part of the record of this meeting. And right now, the proposal is part of the record because it's on our website. Is there a way we can make this staff PowerPoint part of the record of this meeting?
Trustee Tony, and this meeting is being recorded. So the PowerPoint presented is part of the recording, and it is going to be posted, and it is public record.
Right. I appreciate that. It would be helpful for somebody who's reviewing a meeting that if you posted it separately on the website as part, add it to this, add it as an attachment. When I go to the website, underneath this item, there's attachments, and right now it's blank. There are no attachments. All I'm requesting, so that somebody doesn't have to, because if you don't review this meeting recording, you'll never find it. And a lot of people don't sit around viewing recordings of meeting. It's you and me talking here. I'm just trying to be practical. So maybe you could, under attachments, place the staff report under attachments. I'm just trying to make a suggestion that will make it more accessible. And then if I'm looking for it, I know where to find it. If other members of the public are looking for it, because it gives a little bit more detail. And I like it. I think it's good.
So what we will do, because we have PowerPoints for the board meeting, this committee, RAD, et cetera. So we'll, historically, those haven't been posted, though they have been public documents. If anybody wants them, they are entitled to copies of them. So we'll just work to ensure that we have a consistent policy, and we'll inform the committee at the next meeting how that is being carried out.
Thank you very much. I do.
Donna, so Sonia here. Donna, it is in the agenda. It's posted also as part of the Finance Committee agenda. So it is under the Finance Committee meeting agenda with the attachment. Can be found there.
Oh, I'm looking at the website and I don't see it. It says annual review of debt collection efforts and approved policy. I see that. Attachment, none. I don't see their PowerPoint when I'm looking on the website.
Yeah, and don't focus on the reference to attachment. It was an old way that things were posted, so that shouldn't be your reference point. But Mark, I don't see it either at the with the agenda item. So we'll develop a consistent approach that works for the board and all of the meetings, and we'll report back at the next meeting how it'll be handled.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this item?
I'm sorry, just for clarification, if I hit the business, it shows up. Isn't that part of, and I won't belabor it anymore, but that was a very good suggestion. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. If there's no other comments or questions, do I hear a motion?
I would move that we approve this policy.
Thank you, Mark.
I second.
Thank you, Sonia, for the second. Veronica, if you could take the vote, please.
Cisneros,
Aye.
De La Cruz,
Yes.
Dellen,
Yes.
Kanong,
Yes.
So, Tony.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Veronica. And with that, that completes our business for the Finance Committee of the State Bar of California today. I want to thank the trustees and particularly thank the staff who worked to bring these matters to us and provide explanations for them today. Thank any members of the public that have joined us. And with that, we will adjourn our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Aye.